Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Shed Organics Show. My name is Jordan, and today's episode is another fabulous one. We are joined by a very inspiring young lady by the name of Taylor, who is a very big shark enthusiast, and she's doing some incredible work in helping to spread awareness about the issues that we face with shark conservation and even people like us living in Australia who have to deal with and encounter sharks on a somewhat regular basis, sharing our beaches and our oceans with these incredible creatures. Now, if you're anything like me, you might have somewhat of an inbuilt generational fear, as Taylor calls it, about sharks and about these apex predators. And you might have seen the movie Jaws, like she touches on in this episode. And you have this preconceived idea of what these giant creatures are like in the ocean. And Taylor's here to dispel a whole lot of these myths and try and really get us to understand and, most importantly, respect these incredible creatures. So, this conversation was really enlightening for me. And I think the passion, the enthusiasm, the positivity, and the confidence that Taylor has in expressing all of these ideas and bringing them to us in such an easy to understand way, inspiring the next generation, it's really made me feel super hopeful that we have people like Taylor out there doing these wonderful things. So, if you're a bit of a shark enthusiast yourself, or if you're into your marine biology, then this episode is for you. So let's jump straight into it. This is Taylor, and she is our wonderful shark enthusiast. For me, and I'm sure like for many of the people that I've ever met and around the world, when you think of places like Australia, often even like South Africa, where we've got all this big surf, we're also thinking about places where there's loads of sharks, right? And I don't know whether you surf or whether you just like love the water and have grown up around the water or something like that. But most people who surf and grow up around the water either have this really big fear of sharks because they're going into their place or their environment, or they're at one with the whole ocean and go like, this is just, it is what it is. We're sharing it and all of that kind of thing. But I can't help but, for me personally, be petrified that I'm in their territory and I can't swim as well as them. So how do you feel about the fear of sharks, or like how do you balance and teach people not to be scared of these really apex predators?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And yes, there's definitely two sides of the story, especially in the surfing community. Me personally, I'm a volunteer surf lifesaver at Noosa Main Beach, and I also love getting out in the water, surfing, snorkeling. I also do a bit of sustainable spearfishing. Um, and yes, you're right. There are definitely very much two sides of the stories. For me personally, I didn't actually grow up a little mermaid baby. I did grow up surrounded by wildlife, but my family and I moved up to the Sunshine Coast in 2018. So I believe I was around 10, 11 years old. And growing up, especially on the coast, mum and dad wanted me involved in surf life saving and nippers. So I got heavily involved in that and I just fell in love with being in the ocean. But it actually wasn't until I had my very first wild shark encounter on the most southern reef of the Great Barrier Reef. And I was with my dad and my little sister, and we were snorkeling. And he grabs on to me and my sister as we see a very small baby black tip swim past us. And, he grabbed onto it thinking it's going to come up and attack us and eat us. but it didn't do that. And it swam off peacefully into the distance. And really, from that moment, I was hooked on this misunderstood species because, like a lot of people, I was absolutely terrified of sharks growing up. And yeah, that moment really kind of hooked me on this species and wanting to learn more. But I've been in the water multiple times and had some very interesting shark encounters. One time I was paddling on my kneeboard, surf life saving kneeboard, which is a pretty long board if you guys don't know
Yeah.
it. One of those, surf life saving boards. So we can carry people on them. So they're really long. And I was paddling with a mate around Noosa National Park. And we just turned the corner into a bay and we are paddling. And I look to my right and I see a dorsal fin, a really, really big dorsal fin, about half a meter away from my friend. And it was so big that it literally looked like a baby humpback whale.
Oh my
It
gosh.
wasn't whale season, so it definitely wasn't a baby humpback whale. And you just saw all this white water and it was grey. Still not sure to this day what shark species it was. Um, we reckon it was probably like a great white or a really, really big tiger shark. Just by the colors, it was grey and it was lighter underneath. And we all know those are the colors of our beautiful great white sharks.
Wow.
And that moment definitely really like shook me up. And I remember just obviously going straight into flight mode and wanting to get away. But I calmed myself down somehow in that situation, listened to all the knowledge I'd gathered and all the knowledge I share, which I'll talk later about with kids about how to be shark smart. And I grabbed my friend's board to make us look like a bigger object. And we somehow paddled away very slowly. And that moment definitely very much, made me question, like, I'm still afraid of sharks, but I respect sharks, and that's the difference between fear and respect. It's natural to respect, to fear an apex predator. That is 100% okay. When I'm in murky water swimming around, it is always going to be at the back of my mind. There's still apex predators. Some shark species are a lot friendlier than others. And this moment really just grounded me in if sharks wanted to eat us, we would not be in the water, and I would probably not be here right now because that shark could have eaten us both easily. It would have been longer than both of our boards combined, well over 5 meters. So it would have been pretty big. And I've had some other pretty interesting encounters. I was off Sunshine Beach trying to rescue a really large female green sea turtle on the wildlife rescue jet ski. It was the man who runs Wildlife Rescue Noosa, Will Watson, on the front, me in the middle, and my dad, Dan, on the back. Dad will be in quite a few of these stories. He's
Cool.
a big supporter of mine. And we saw this massive green sea turtle. I love these stories.
Yeah, please.
And we had come up to it and it's on the surface. And there's this thing with the turtles we rescue, because I do quite a bit of wildlife rescuing too. It's called floatism. It's when they've ingested plastic and they're at the surface and they can't dive down because of all the gases and bubbles in their stomach. So we get a lot of turtles with that disease. And we have this massive green female sea turtle, and we're thinking, how are we going to get her on this jet ski with, a teenager and two fully grown adults? And I just get this feeling in my stomach. I'm like, guys, I reckon we should give the turtle a bit of space. We should maybe back off a bit. And and then I study the turtle's behavior, and I've been in the water quite a few times with turtles. So not fully professional and understand the behavior, but I just knew something was up by the way it was sitting on the surface. And I have my phone and I'm recording and I say, hey guys, I think we should give it some space. I reckon there's a shark around. I reckon there's a tiger shark around because tiger sharks feed on turtles. And at that exact moment, there was a big splash and the turtle was gone. And it's important to note that it was a dead flat, glassy day. We were actually out looking to rescue a humpback whale, and it was like flat. We'd made it through Noosa Bar, which can be really sketchy at times, like no problems whatsoever. It was really flat. And we're sitting there, and this turtle's gone from the big splash. And I'm still recording on my phone, and I finished recording. And then all of a sudden, the jet ski flips over,
Oh my gosh.
and we all end up in the water. And it's not easy to flip a jet ski over. And like my dad literally thought the jet ski was broken and it was gonna like drown in that moment. But we ended up getting on the jet ski and I was like, guys, that was a shark. That was a shark. And they don't believe me. But it wasn't until later when I slowed down the footage at home that I see the turtle and then I see the back of definitely not another turtle, it of a tiger shark coming up onto the back of the turtle because you see these two lumps. And then in that moment you're like, I told you so. So
That's
it was a
amazing.
tiger shark that had taken the turtle. It was very likely that the tiger shark had come up underneath us thinking we were a second turtle and flipped the jet ski over. So I've definitely had some pretty intense encounters, but like I said, it just really reinforces the fact for me that, I mean, if sharks wanted to eat us, we would not be surfing or even dipping our toes into the water. So yeah, it's just about respecting them. It's okay to fear them, but it's all about respecting them. And like you said, we're in their home and yeah, just a
Yeah,
healthy amount of respect.
you're so right. I love those stories. You're a great storyteller. I that gives me like the weird feeling because it's like I've had one shark encounter in my life and um I was in Byron Bay. I'll tell the story quickly. I was in Byron Bay where they don't have shark nets, correct? So there's no shark nets, but I want to touch on shark nets because I've seen a couple of things that you've posted about that. Um, I was out the back, they call it, for those who aren't surfing, which is behind the break of the waves, right? And you're sort of waiting to catch one of these waves in. And bear in mind, even though most people assume everyone with dreadlocks can surf, I can't surf or can't surf very well at all and would struggle to get maybe one out of 25 waves. So we're on the beach and sorry, we're on the beach. Somebody comes out and starts calling for a shark, and everybody just jumps on their board, jumps on the next wave, and cruises all the way in. No dramas at all. And there's me, who can't catch a wave, starting to sort of paddle towards the beach, going, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to be the last one left out here. I'm going to be prey." And I actually saw this big shadow underneath the board. Like it was maybe not directly, but in front of me, this huge big shadow swim underneath me. And I was convinced, I'm convinced that was the shark. It's huge. And I was just paddling for my life. I had no idea how to deal with any of this. I didn't know about making yourself big, or I was on this beautiful multicolored board and nice and like big waving hello at the shark if he wanted to come and get me. But I just got in, pretty sure I just body surfed or just boogie boarded the wave in, and I was shook like after that trying to think about it. I was like, "Oh my goodness." But you're right. One, it reminded me that yes, we are in their territory. So they've controlled that. They know exactly what like is up. If they saw these thousands of surfers in there every day, they would just pick them off. Like they would if they wanted to eat them. So most of the time, from my experience and from what I've learned, is that they'll only attack if they feel threatened or if they mistake you for something that they normally would eat, like sea turtle or something like that. So what what do you find is like the main thing that sharks are wanting to attack? Like, are they searching for specific prey? I suppose it depends on the species as well. But typically, I think I'm thinking about great white sharks as they're obviously the ones that are portrayed as the big, bad, ugly, scary ones because they're quite damaging. But then we also have species like maybe the tiger shark, like you mentioned, or the bull shark as well. And I used to live in, when we first moved to this country from New Zealand, which has no scary animals whatsoever in New Zealand, really. Come here naively, and we lived on some canals. And we would go, my brother and I would jump in this blow up dinghy in the canals. And we're like young, probably younger than you, paddling around this thing, jumping in, having a swim around. We're like, this is beautiful weather. Australia is great. And then our neighbor was like, I'd get out of there. Like, there's quite a few bull sharks that live under the pontoons and all of this kind of thing. And there's been attacks before. So get out. And so we never went back in. I'd actually even cut my foot on an oyster shell and was bleeding through the whole thing as I was like coming out of the water. I was like, that's probably not a good thing to be doing in front of a shark. But I'll go back to my question. What are sharks wanting? Like, what are they looking for and hunting for? And how can you avoid? You mentioned something about teaching kids to be shark smart. Can we run in through a little bit about that for people in general, myself included, all the way down to our kids as well? How can we be shark smart?
Yeah, so you mentioned some great points in there. I think the first one I wanted to pick up on was that you said there's thousands of surfers out there. And when you think about it, there's thousands of people out there in the water.
True.
And I mean, we have an average of around 10 attacks across the world, 10 fatalities, sorry, across the world each year. And we actually have 250 deaths from phones in America across the world each year. And when
Crazy.
you compare those two, it's like, you know,
Mm,
be
you're so
crazy,
right. Yeah.
like you said. And when you think about that, that's only 10 sharks, mainly juveniles, young teenagers. As we know, they all make mistakes. That make mistakes. And you think about how many mistakes we make a day. So they're pretty incredible creatures. They've been here, they've survived 5 mass extinctions. They've been here for over 450 million years. They're older than trees. So they're pretty smart. And the fact about bleeding, so that's another kind of misunderstood thing in the community. And I personally thought that it was human blood that sharks are attracted to. Yes, they can sense human blood, but they're actually attracted to fish blood,
Wow.
not human blood. So that's really interesting.
It is. Thankfully for me.
And you're still here, you're still here. So that kind of, you know, um, bounds my point. But with the shark species, the three sharks you mentioned, yes, the great white, the bull shark, and the tiger shark. Personally, I've had encounters, seen encounters with two of them, maybe a great white. We can't really get that one yet. But tiger sharks, the reason why the tiger shark would have attacked that turtle when we're out on the jet ski is because most tiger sharks are known to be quite lazy hunters. We like to call them the garbage trucks of the sea. They've eaten, honestly, if you search it up, they've eaten like the weirdest stuff. Cows, obviously, sometimes
Yeah.
cows out in the ocean, number plates. I'm pretty sure there's been a tiger shark that's had a full suit of armor discovered in its stomach. Like these guys, they will eat anything. Kind of like my dog, she's a Groodle. She'll absolutely pick up anything off the road. So tiger sharks, they're quite lazy hunters. So the chances of having an adverse encounter with a tiger shark are quite slim. I have a friend over in the Bahamas. His name's Jim Abernethy, and he's known this one tiger shark. Her name's Emma for 21 years. And she actually comes up to him for pats.
Whoa.
Yes, it's pretty incredible, their relationship. Now, I'm not saying to go up and cuddle a tiger shark by any means. He is a professional, but that's just kind of me describing their nature. Bull sharks, on the other hand, I have quite a bit of respect for bull sharks. Obviously, being able to travel up river systems, we know the clarity in the water is not great. That will throw back into one of my shark tips later, but the clarity is not great. So that obviously minimizes our chance of seeing the sharks and maximizes their chances because sharks, they have incredible senses. They actually have a sixth sense called the apollon of Lorenzini, which is pores on their nose and along the lateral sides of their body, so along the sides of their bodies. And that allows them to detect electric currents in the water. So that's how they find their prey. So, and that's how
That's
they,
so cool.
yes, and that's how the bull sharks find their prey in bad clarity, bad visibility. Clarity means visibility. And so bull sharks have actually been known to bump before they bite, which is a great thing. So if you get bumped while you're in the water,
Get
probably
out.
probably best to get out. Me personally, I've been kind of getting into spearfishing because after watching Seaspiracy, me and my family didn't eat seafood for like 5 years. And I've learned over that time, if you want to eat seafood, the best way is to catch it yourself. So I've kind of picked up spearfishing in the last few months, and I was actually out out of Mooloolaba at a blinker. And there were bait balls of trevally, and we had speared a trevally, and we're bringing it in. Well, the boys were bringing it in. I go out spearfishing because I'm the person to look after the sharks. Gives them a bit more confidence. But yeah, they'd speared the trevally and they were bringing it in, and we had about 10 3-meter bull sharks just absolutely shark the fish. So that means they all come in and get the fish before we get it. We obviously let them have the fish because there's no point in bringing up a fish with the 10 bull sharks attached to it. So I definitely think bull sharks are a lot more aggressive than tiger sharks. And great white sharks, normally great white sharks, they actually, for seals, they bite seals and they let them bleed out. Sharks, they're so smart. They literally let them bleed out. So a majority of fatalities from shark attacks for humans, it's really rare that the shark actually comes back and finishes the whole meal. Normally they bite and it's actually the death is due to blood loss from the shark, but blood loss mainly. And um yeah, that's they just bleed out and sadly pass away. So it just shows once again how smart sharks are. And like you said, it's normally mistaken identity. So when they bite, they're like, "Oh, hold on, this isn't normally my food source," and they will leave it. And like you also said, a lot of attacks just aren't random attacks. They are normally triggered by an event or an action from a human beforehand. Over in WA, I know recently there was an incident where there were two people snorkeling, I mean, sorry, spearfishing, and they had a fish attached to the end of their line, and a tiger shark came in because, like I said, they're very lazy eaters. There's a fish right in front of them. And yeah, it came up and took the fish, and that led to accidentally drag the spearfisher under, but they were absolutely fine in the end, just a bit shaken up. But yeah, so a lot of it is mistaken identity, like you said, thinking we're turtles or completely an accident or triggered beforehand. So it's really interesting. And surprisingly, out of those three sharks, the shark that I would be most worried about is called a oceanic white tip. Now, luckily, these guys, they like to hang out in more the deeper blue, so we don't really see them here. But they're actually a lot more aggressive, I'd say, than tiger sharks and bull sharks. I'm not sure about great whites yet because obviously I haven't really shared the water with them. But just being in the water, it's important to remember, just being in the water with these guys. I think for everyone who's been fully present in the water with a shark, it's either been absolutely terrifying or the best moment of their lives, depending on who you are. But when you come out of the water, you really respect them, and they take up this presence, this energy in the water. It's pretty insane to share the water with them. So yeah,
Yeah,
just
you're absolutely right. Like having, I mean, I've watched a few things of people doing it. I haven't done it myself, and I don't know if I would. I might, I've thought about doing one of these kind of cage dive experiences. And I don't know whether you've done this, but there was when they first released these headset things for the games. Like I don't really play games, but they had this one where you could do a shark dive encounter in virtual reality, and you put the headphones on and you put the goggles on, and then you go down and you're sort of like looking around. But it's obviously a game, so they make it so that the shark comes and starts trying to smash through the cage at you. And that, like, at the beginning of virtual reality was scaring me because it sort of hijacks your senses and things. But so being in the water, I imagine, is totally different. They're not going to dramatize it as much. And I've seen, I actually watched, you might know of it, Chris Hemsworth did a documentary on sharks. I watched that a fair few years ago. That was really cool. Gave me a lot of understanding as well as to what's going on. But even just watching people swimming with sharks where they go down and they're actually not in a cage and they're around these creatures and watching how they move effortlessly through the water. And also watching your one with the whale shark, was it? This enormous one that was so beautiful, like that size creature. That experience must be so surreal for you to be in there and kind of swimming around. What's that feeling like for you in terms of just being like, yeah, having this respect for them? Is there any fear at all, or are you just like, whoa, this is crazy?
Um, I say there's a little bit of fear in situations where, like, for example, spearfishing, it's going crazy. There's a thousand things happening. There's always going to be that little bit of fear. But then again, like, I'll go straight towards them if one's coming at me with little to no fear. And that moment, I guess, when you're in the water with a shark, it's really hard to put into words. Just trying to think about it because I've never had a question like this. But I think it almost makes me think, yeah, I love the work I'm doing and I'm going to continue to protect these guys because it's those moments that I want more people to experience. I don't want these guys, I don't want sharks to go extinct. I want, future generations to be able to experience the experiences I have, like swimming alongside a whale shark. I was over in WA, like you said, a month ago, swimming with whale sharks. And I just want future generations to be able to experience that too. So I think that's more, it just fills your bucket and it's a beautiful experience. And a lot of my conservation work is not always in the water, hands-on saving all these creatures. A lot of it is public speaking, which I was absolutely terrified at first, but when you speak about what you love, the fear does go away. And it's a lot, emails, speaking, education, not a lot of it's actually in the water with the animal you're protecting. So those moments are just absolutely beautiful and really hard to put into words.
Yeah,
Um,
like
and
you
just
said, it reaffirms it for you, doesn't it? Yeah.
then 100%. And like you mentioned before, being shark smart. So I do, since being involved in this space since 12 years old, I will start to touch on the subject. It is a very big topic at the moment, especially here in Queensland, shark nets and drumlines.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got kind of involved in that space when I was 12 years old. Well, I might as well start talking about it
Yeah,
now.
go for it. Go for it.
So after becoming hooked on sharks, after that encounter, only a few months later, Boy Shark Cub, which is a documentary you can watch on Stan, and Netflix now, I believe you can watch it on Netflix.
Cool.
Um, it's an amazing documentary, and I watched it with my friends from Nippers, and it's all about the shark control program, which is shark nets and drum lines. And we as nippers actually used to paddle, not really meant to be saying this, but we actually used to paddle around the shark nets during training. And we had no idea what these devices were doing. So to give a basic rundown, shark nets in Queensland are 124 to 186 meters and they're placed in a body water of 12 meters, however, only go down to 4 to 6 meters. So they're placed only a few hundred meters of popular swimming beaches. I'm not sure of the exact number of shark nets right now. I'll tell you why in a second, in Queensland specifically. But yeah, they're placed on beaches kilometers long and they cover the most smallest patch of water. So sharks actually have a 96% chance of getting past the shark nets, and over 40% of the sharks caught in the net is actually caught on the beach side, meaning they've already been in close contact to beachgoers and are peacefully making their way back out into deeper water. And drumlines is basically like fishing. It's basically a fishing device. So it's a big buoy with a long chain and a really, really big hook. So about the size of an adult male's hand, really big hook. And that's normally baited with shark flesh or mullet. Sometimes it's baited off um, products from the sharks that are caught, which is really sad to think about. And the problem with the shark nets and drumlines is the bycatch. The bycatch is insane, the numbers. I believe for every one shark caught, three by bycatch is caught. So bycatch includes like turtles, dolphins, whales, humpback whales, migrating humpback whales. We get rays, dugongs, penguins down in Sydney. Like it's insane. Any species known in that area or known to migrate through that area will basically become entangled in the program if they go close enough. And the problem is when bycatch is caught, it's basically like a free buffet for sharks. It
Hmm.
actually is attracting larger species into popular swimming beaches. So not only is the program put in place to protect us? It firstly doesn't do that. It actually attracts larger predators into popular beach going loving places, like, for example, Noosa. We got them basically at any popular beaches you'd go swimming at. There'd be shark nets and drum lines. Normally three drum lines, one shark net. Here in Noosa, in my backyard, my local beach, we have two shark nets and three drum lines. Personally, I've managed so many whale entanglements in those nets since the age of 12. Baby humpback whales filming original content. It is absolutely heartbreaking. But it's also really sad that it's not only bycatch, like whales, dolphins, turtles. There have been so many human incidents with the program that has caused drownings, which absolutely devastating. And that rarely gets reported on. I just researched it this morning and I had no idea, but there was actually a drowning December 8th, 2024,
Oh,
um,
wow.
in Gold Coast in a shark net. And another thing that's really sad and scarier than sharks, in my opinion, is during extreme weather events, like, for example, Cyclone Alfred. The equipment actually gets displaced, and it ends up coming closer in. And I've had mates catching barrels with, like, photos I've seen my mates catching barrels with a buoy from the drum line actually in the wave with them.
Oh.
And you're
Yeah.
thinking like this massive hook, and that would be fatal.
Yeah.
And the equipment can also be dragged by large marine creatures like whales and manta rays. Um, and yeah,
It
it's
doesn't sound like a very good idea. Like, I mean, obviously, everything might start with some good intentions,
yeah,
and they're thinking, look, if we can deter them and all of that kind of thing, then it might be a good idea. But if someone sat down to me in a meeting room and said, we're going to dangle like a few nets in the water here, there's a 96% chance that they can get around it. And they're also going to collect up and kill a whole bunch of other marine life as well, which will then bring in more sharks. Do you think that's a good idea? I'd say no. But
yeah,
these things have been in place for a while, and I'm imagining that they're not really thinking about the data that's being collected from this and doing anything about it. From the research that I've done on your page and what you're talking about and everything, there are obviously other alternatives that are starting to come in. Um, what can we do instead of that? And if we are to like share the water with them, how are we supposed to make sure that the public themselves, like people like me who go to the beach, for example, I would think, okay, if I'm going to the Gold Coast where they've got shark nets, I feel so much better because they've said there's a shark net. When in reality, they don't tell you that there's 96% chance that then it's not even going to work anyway. So, how do you explain to the public, hey, like these shark nets don't do anything and you're actually at risk, probably more risk, bringing in more species. But then, yeah, how do you educate the public? And then what else can we do instead of these crazy fishing lines and things like this?
yeah. It's really scary. So the program has been in place for nearly 100 years.
Oh,
Um,
100 years?
1932, they were installed in New South Wales, and 1964 in Queensland. We also have drum lines inside the Great Barrier Reef, which is pretty
That's wild. Why? Yeah,
pretty insane to think about. So yeah, just touching on recent updates and everything. So obviously we've had a change in government. I'm still young, so I don't completely understand. I try not get into all the
me neither. Don't worry.
too crazy for my brain, honestly. I got too much else happening. But so the government has actually just invested 88.228, I believe, $1 million in not replacing the program, in expanding it.
Doesn't
In
that give you a lot of hope for our government? Oh, man.
in Queensland. So we will be seeing here on the Sunshine Coast more shark nets and drumlines at Happy Vale. Happy Valley. I keep mucking that one up. Mucky, yeah, that place. Perugian North and Coolum North, I believe. Those are the identified spots here on the Sunshine Coast, which is absolutely devastating to see. And we recently, New South Wales has taken a step back on their shark nets. So we are actually the last state in Australia to cull sharks off our beautiful beaches. So Western Australia stopped quite a few years ago, and New South Wales, as I mentioned, has specifically taken a step back regarding shark nets. Also, New South Wales is a lot better than Queensland because even before they took the step back, they didn't have shark nets in the water during whale season, whereas we kept our shark nets in. But yeah, honestly, since being involved in this space, like you said, it can be really doom and gloom, but I try to remain as positive and hopeful as I possibly can, which is at times can be really hard, but there's no point in being looking at the situation in a negative way. Nothing ever is going to happen. So since being involved in this space, I've gone to state parliament multiple times talking and empowering ministers to look at all the modern solutions and alternatives, and those alternatives are absolutely incredible. They're absolutely insane. So we are working with surf life saving drones. So drones can not only spot and ID sharks in the local area, but they can also perform rescues, which is so
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
Full barriers that have been installed over at beaches in WA that I've seen, they're really cool. So they go from the top of the water to the bottom. They're made out of recycled plastic, they're eco-friendly, nothing can become entangled, and they also create miniature ecosystems, which is really cool, especially looking at it from a tourism point of view. And then you also have personal deterrence. So Ocean Guardian, which is a small device you can put on your wrist in the tail of your board, which is where, for people that don't surf, near the leg rope, which is the rope that attaches to your ankle. So in the surfboard, you can put it on your spear gun, you can wrap it around your ankle. And like I mentioned before, sharks have a sixth sense. And basically, this small little device overpowers that sense and deters the shark. So it's not like an electric shock, but more like a really bad smell. So there's all these incredible alternatives. And after reading the report and gathering clarity from the chief of staff on Tuesday, they will be doubling the drone program in Queensland and making that permanent, which is a step in the right direction considering the terrible extension of the traditional program. And they will be looking at investing in modern technology, but I'm not too sure how long that will take. That's what was said with the last people in power. So we will see what happens. But I think since being involved in this space, like I mentioned, I like to be positive and hopeful. And when I say those two words, positive and hopeful, I always think about the next generation. So I absolutely love talking to kids, students, environment, kids that are into the environment, scouts, kids that are interested in the ocean, kids that aren't interested in the ocean, and just informing them about how to be shark smart in the water. That's my main goal, is giving the next generation the knowledge. So it might not completely eliminate the fear, but it will give them the respect and the confidence that's needed in the water. So they won't need, that mental, like you said, that mental thing where, there's shark nets in the water, I'm safe. They won't need that. They won't need
Mm.
that. And kids, they like to talk to their parents, they like to talk to their grandparents. So yeah, just I give them these tips, and some of them are like really simple tips, like you eat in the morning and in late afternoon, before at night, you eat in the morning you eat in the morning and at night, and that's when sharks eat too. The water clarity is bad, or if it's been raining and it's mixed up the nutrients, it's probably not best to go in the water because the small nutrients attracts the smaller fish, which attracts the medium fish, which eventually attracts our beautiful sharks. If there's a whale that's washed up or a turtle, probably not best to go swimming in that area because obviously that scent is going to attract sharks. Like I mentioned, that blood does attract sharks. Just general tips like that. Avoid drop-offs. We don't really have drop-offs here of our beaches, more for the Great Barrier Reef. And that's basically when it's really shallow and then all of a sudden goes really, really deep. And it's actually in Finding Nemo, if you guys kind of know
Yes, that's
Nemo,
right.
with those drop-offs, because that's where sharks like to hang out and looking for the next meal, like turtles. So yeah, just those general tips and letting the kids know about those, and hopefully changing minds and opinions. And it's really awesome. Kids absolutely love sharks. They love sharks.
Yeah, that's so true. It's like setting them up for a more positive um image of these sharks. And as you said, the kids will like share that to their parents and go, "Oh, they're so fascinating." And it might change the parents' mind and then change the grandparents and ripple effect out from there.
100%. It's the fear is definitely a generational fear, 100%. When I start my talks, I ask the room three questions: who's afraid of sharks, who isn't afraid of sharks, and who respects sharks. 99% of the kids say they respect sharks, and there's only probably one or two people that put their hands up that are afraid of sharks.
Really?
And since talking to kids, I would say the number of young people who are afraid of sharks, that number is dropping greatly. When I first started, it'd be about five. Now it's about one or two, if I'm lucky, one or two that are afraid of sharks. And all of them respect sharks, which is really wonderful. And that generational fear is definitely due to movies such as Jaws. I actually watched Jaws right before an interview for my very first time. And I liked it, to be honest with you, because like you said, technology has changed. When it first came out, it looked really realistic, but looking back at it now, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I see which one's real and which one's not. And I'm also really lucky to be working alongside Valerie Taylor. Valerie Taylor, so she's a well-known shark conservationist and filmmaker, and she actually helped film Jaws. So getting to know about all the little tips behind Jaws, you're like, yep, I know what happened there. I know what happened there. So yeah, just it's definitely a generational thing, and things like social media, like you said, you'd seen people swimming alongside sharks. Just it does change the next generation's opinions for sure.
That's so cool. Look, Taylor, one thing I liked about when I f figured out what you do, it was secondary, as I said to you before, I found out that you were only 16, which is crazy. And the reason I say it's crazy is because, I'm 32. So even in that gap of a generation or our age gap, I get people my age and older thinking that 16-year-olds these days are just scrolling on TikTok and doing nothing with their lives, which is so not true because in my opinion, much more informed generation and much more aware of what's going on. And I love to highlight people that are young because I still consider myself young at 32, trying to do something about gardening, which is often talked about as something you do when you retire. So I'm ahead of my time trying to do something that is a retirement age thing. So I'm trying to change that. And seeing people like yourself be quite honestly, like I'm pretty amazed by you in terms of your confidence, your knowledge, your positivity, and I wanted to ask you, how do you get received by other people your age? Um, and what do you think about people your age in their understanding of these types of topics? So, what response do you get from all of the type of work you do?
Yeah, so when I first started, I as I mentioned in the past 4 years, perceptions have definitely changed. When I first started, I was kind of, that weird kid that was obsessed with sharks, stay away from her kind of thing. So it definitely wasn't perceived as cool swimming with sharks. It was more like weird because no one does that. Um, but it definitely changed for young people. Me, being at school, at first it was like, yeah, okay. But the more I kept doing it and the more I kept, working with the surfing community in particular, they're like, wait, hold up, she's kind of onto something. This is actually kind of cool. So I definitely, young people, as you mentioned, they're so well informed and educated. I love those two words. Young people so well informed and educated. But I'm talking to kids like year two, they're busting out facts that I don't even know. Do you know plastic bags take this many years to decompose at the bottom of the Mariana Trench? Like, how do you know this stuff? It's absolutely insane. So I think young people definitely like listening to what I have to say because it's definitely something new and challenging the typical stereotype of a shark. And I think our generation loves to challenge issues. And yeah, older people. I haven't had that much pushback. I've been really supported in the conservation space. And I think it's because the topics I talk about are relevant, especially to the next generation, because the decisions made will affect the next generation. And I definitely have something to say. I was at first terrified of public speaking. I could not speak in front of my class in grade four. And just pushing myself to get outside of my comfort zone and becoming really confident in what I say, especially like how I mentioned at the start. Those encounters made me really confident in what I was saying because I've lived through it. Lived through a pretty intense encounter and just being confident in what I was saying, people were ready to listen to me, especially councils and ministers in power. They're pretty keen to hear from youth. So I think that really threads back into what youth can do. And as you mentioned, a lot of kids are on social media, TikTok, Instagram, not so much Facebook. Personally, I struggle with Facebook. I don't really know much about that, but Instagram and TikTok and actually using those platforms to educate more kids. That's what I've done. So using social media to your advantage and it reaches so many people. And I get so many young people, especially young girls, DM me, say, what can I do to help? How do I do this? I don't live on the coast. Can I still make a difference? And my response is always, anyone can make a difference. Everyone can add to this battle. My favorite quote goes, a drop becomes a ripple becomes a wave, and waves do change tides. And it doesn't matter whether you live on the coast or in the middle of Australia or overseas in the middle of America, everything is connected to the ocean. And if you're passionate about it and if you love it, you're going to make it happen. And it's honestly those small little actions that create those waves of change, like picking up plastic. I know it's everyone says it, but picking up plastic, putting it in the bin, making sharks part of the conversation. I think personally, the way the shark control program, shark nets and drumlines are going to become removed and replaced is through informing the public, like how I told you about the 96% chance, laying out all those facts, informing them so they can make their own educated decision. It's honestly all those really small actions. And when I first became involved in this space, I started volunteering for my local wildlife rescue group. And then that led to Sea Shepherd, and then that led to Envoy Foundation, the thing that inspired me. So it's making also connections in that space, and it's really a flowering network, and everyone in that space is so supportive of young voices. And they want those young voices to be heard. So it's a beautiful space to be involved in. And if you're passionate about it, especially if you're young, 100% get into it. Just honestly, just full send into it. That's what I do.
It's so cool, Taylor. That's really an awesome story because I imagine being young and rocking up to, these people in suits and trying to convince them that, you have something worthy of being listened to might be quite difficult. If they're often, I don't know, maybe it's unfair to say, but they're often stuck in their ways and they look down on young people as if they don't have that lived experience, but you're backing it up with the facts and the lived experience and, as you say, some relevant information, which is really cool. And I'm so impressed by your ability to inspire people and just to hold this space and knowledge and be able to communicate it so effectively. I think you're doing an absolutely fabulous job. Um, can I, let's go back to sharks a little bit. I just want to wheel back a little bit to one thing. So we all possibly, if you're in Australia, I do have some international listeners, but in Australia, you might have seen the Kelly Slater, or is it Kelly Slater? No, Mick Fanning. Mick Fanning shark. Thank you. There you go. There's my knowledge. Mick Fanning shark encounter where he was surfing in the competition. and encountered a shark. Now, we touched on a few things about maybe they bump you, maybe they're, confused by you and things like this. And you also touched on making yourself seem really big and things like this. What do you think about techniques to deal with encountering a shark? If you do encounter a shark, what can you do? I swear I've heard it in movies and TV shows, but they say like poke it in the eye. Is that something that's an actual thing, or what can we do?
So worst case scenario, that would work. Don't quote me on it. Every shark is different. But yeah, so Mick Fanning, I believe it was a great white shark, and he ended up punching it in the nose. And that is where all their extra senses are. So that's a really sensitive spot. So worst comes to worst, I would not recommend doing it if you have other options. But if you do come face to face with a shark, um, push it, punch it in its around its nose, around its gills. That's really another sensitive area. You can also poke it in the eyes, but I would rather go for the nose than the eyes because the eyes are further back than the nose. So yeah, just give it a nice old back on the
Yeah.
nose.
And that
But
should deter it usually.
that should, because it will get upset because it's got all its senses there. Can't quote me on this, but yes, that is what I would do in that situation if you come face to face with a
Yeah.
shark. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Because like, yeah, I think people, they are all okay sharing, respecting, and most people don't want to encounter a shark when they're out there in the ocean. They're not looking to encounter a shark. So sometimes it can just surprise you, and all of a sudden you're in the situation where there's one nearby. And as you said, sort of make it a little bit big, make yourself seem bigger if they're sort of swimming around. And generally, they probably will leave you alone, I would imagine. Um, have you have you ever heard of anybody sort of successfully um, coming up with techniques to kind of talk about this stuff? Is there anybody that you are inspired by that's really leading the way in these types of conversations, not only for just dealing with sharks when you meet them in the water, but who are you looking up to in this space, in this whole area, and inspired by?
I definitely have quite a few mentors and people I definitely look up to. One of them, as I mentioned, is Valerie Taylor. She's 90 this year, so she's
Goodness.
older, but I'll tell you what, she has got all the stories. I think my mind has like doubled in like storage capacity after meeting her last year. She's an incredible lady, and her advice to me would be just, push it on the nose. But there are other people like Ocean Ramsey over in Hawaii. I would recommend checking out her page. She swam with like the biggest great white shark. It was a pregnant female. I think it was like something like 6 meters,
I've
something.
seen this.
Yep, incredible. And she actually has a book if anyone is really interested in techniques to deter sharks and understand sharks. I believe it's called My Shark Teacher. Otherwise, just search up Ocean Ramsey in books. She's got some incredible resources out there. Other people that inspire me are Madison Stewart. So she's actually working with shark fishermen up in Indonesia, in Lombok. And she's transferring them from shark fishing into ecotourism, which is insane. Like that is
Yeah.
honestly to grassroots credits to her insane work that she's doing up there. Other people that have influenced my journey is Lauren Sandeman. I met her through Sea Shepherd, and we've really like shared this beautiful journey together. And whenever I need advice, I'd go to her for it. So there's some absolutely incredible people who have shaped me to who I am today. And all credits to them when people say, oh, you're confident, you know what you're saying. Like credits to them because they have made me who I am and supported me so much on this journey so far. So
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, that's important to me to highlight people that you're looking up to as well, because someone else who might, you know, constantly want to do something doesn't know who's in this space and who they can reach out to and who they can start following for all the information. Obviously, following you as well, because you're leading the way with that too. Um, Another thing I want to touch on, if that's okay with you, what's your what's your vision for yourself moving forward and the work that you're wanting to do? What's top of mind at the moment in terms of trying to make a difference for you? You mentioned young kids trying to inspire the next generation, being shark smart, and then obviously the nets and things like this and the drum lines. So, two parts to the question. What are you wanting to make a difference with moving forward, if there's anything we haven't touched on? And then, secondly, where are you hoping to take your career or yourself in sharks and ocean life and all of this?
Yeah, those are really great questions, and obviously they're always changing and evolving. Um, the difference I want to make in, as I mentioned, is just education and changing that stereotype. I think that is honestly going to be the game changer to shark conservation and just getting all those facts out there. I'm also currently working with Valerie Taylor on her project called The String of Pearls, which is protecting these beautiful aggregation spots for the critically endangered grey nurse shark. And an aggregation spot is a spot where all these beautiful grey nurse sharks like to hang out when they're migrating up the east coast of Australia and get those spots fully protected. That would be an amazing goal to achieve, and obviously removing and replacing the program. But there's always work to be done in the informing and educating the public space. So I want to keep going with that and just see what opportunities that opens up. And I'm still in year 11. So
Crazy.
I gotta finish school. I'm looking to get an ATAR, and I'll probably take a gap year before I go to university and just getting in the water and just enjoying the ocean. I think that's one of my main goals for that
Yeah.
gap, getting in the water with the sharks that I love to protect. So that's where I
Cool.
see myself going, but always leaving all the pathways open and just seeing what the universe has for me. I really believe everything happens for a reason. And even being in this space, like sometimes you can get really down, and I feel in a way the ocean always sends me little messages like it will give me one day I was walking along the beach and I was talking to dad about, the shark nets, really sad to see. And then we find this massive ghost net from Indonesia. I mean, that really happens. Yeah, it was massive. We ended up carrying out the beach. So just these little messages. I mean, last year for my birthday, I was out snorkeling and I had a mother and baby dolphin come listen half a meter to me. Like it was insane. So there's all these little messages that keep me going, and I really, take them personally and to heart.
Yeah, as
Yeah.
you should, because you are doing incredible work, and I feel like the ocean knows that. Without sounding too spiritual, I
Yeah,
think it does.
that's what yeah, that's
Yeah, I seriously believe that too. Now, you also mentioned dad quite a bit. Can you talk to me about your relationship with dad in terms of like he obviously supports you in a lot of things that you're doing. Is this new territory for dad, or has he been involved in this the whole time, or are you sort of leading him into all of this?
Yeah, so I'm up here on the coast with my little sister Ruby. She is nearly 13 in a week. Um,
Cool.
Mom and dad. So dad actually used to ride elephants. So he was really, we lived in Asia for a little bit. So he was really into, the conservation, looking after elephants. When he was little, he also used to do quite a bit, not as much as me, but he, used to write little letters when whaling was happening. So he was quite involved in that space. And mum, she used to ride horses. She still does whenever she can. So she was an equestrian. So I grew up surrounded by wildlife, and mum and dad always supported me whenever they could. And yes, last year and the years before, I got to have quite a few days off school whenever there was a turtle rescue or something like that. But this year, we've kind of had to lock in a little bit with school and study, obviously, because it's my final years of schooling. But they understand that I learned so much more at times outside the classroom, experiencing those. And dad is normally the one following me around with a camera, trying to get all the content. If the camera's not in my hand, it'll be in his hand. There's this really funny moment that I remember. I think my little sister was recording and I had found like a white tip at Heron Island, and I was like, Dad, come look at the shark. And he's like, all right, coming. So that definitely describes dad. He's always trying to keep up with me, and he does an amazing job in inspiring me and keeping me motivated when at times it gets hard. And he's just an incredible person to keep pushing me, and mum and dad and my little sister as a support system is honestly the best support system I could ever have in place, because obviously days it does get kind of hard, and they take me down to the ocean and I get in the water and then I feel all filled up ready to go again. So I'm very lucky to have them all supporting me on this journey.
And there we have it, everybody. What a beautiful way to round out that conversation with Taylor giving some flowers to her family. Obviously, having a supportive family that is all in with the things that you are doing is so crucial and important. And that's such a perfect example of it, seeing Taylor running with it while she's still in school, which is such an incredible thing. I only remember when I was in school and I was not thinking about these types of things. And that's generationally or, society just tends to have that happen where we're just not focused on these types of things. But to have somebody like Taylor at such a young age going up there and knocking on the door of our parliaments and trying to make change is just such a heartwarming and inspiring thing. So I was very impressed by Taylor, and I'm sure you will be as well. Please, as always, go and check out her links. They will all be down in the description below in the video links. So whether you're watching this on Spotify, you're listening on Apple, or you're watching on YouTube, check the show notes, check the description. You'll find the links. Go and follow Taylor and keep up to date. And also let her know that you heard this episode and that you enjoyed it, and to keep up the good work. I'm sure some words of encouragement will go a long, long way. She's also a really good point of call if you are interested in doing some work with any marine biology or shark activism, and you're here in Australia or you're in other parts of the world that see some of these incredible creatures. Now, lastly, from me, remember, if you found some value in this show, it only takes 2 seconds, but all you can do for me as a favor is go and either hit the subscribe button, the follow button, or jump on and just give this show a rating. Drop some stars, drop a comment. Let me know what your thoughts were. Give me some encouragement to keep producing better and better episodes and reaching out to more and more guests. And hopefully we can spread the awareness of all of these important topics to more people around the world. So that's it from me. Thank you again so much for listening and being a part of this podcast. I very much look forward to seeing you on the next episode. So take care, and we'll see you then. Bye for now.